My name is Madison Bailey, I'm 32, and last year I almost died while my parents sent my calls to voicemail. They were too busy celebrating my brother Ryan's minor promotion to answer their phone. What they didn't know was that as I lay on my apartment floor, fighting to breathe through the pain, I made a decision. The lifelong pattern of being second best to my golden child brother would end. I would make them see me, truly see me, in a way they never expected. If you're settling in for this story, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe to join me on this journey of betrayal, justice, and ultimately, healing. Growing up in suburban Boston, my early childhood memories are actually pretty warm. For the first 4 years of my life, I was the center of my parents' world. Diana and Richard Bailey doted on their precocious daughter who could read before kindergarten. There are albums full of photos from this time, me on Dad's shoulders at the zoo, Mom teaching me to bake cookies, family picnics where I'm clearly the star of the show. Everything changed when Ryan was born. I remember the day they brought him home. I'd been staying with my grandmother and was excited to meet my baby brother. "You're a big sister now," my mom said, not looking at me as she cooed over Ryan. "You need to be responsible." That became the theme of my childhood. Responsibility, achievement, independence, all while Ryan received endless attention, affection, and celebration. By the time I was 7 and Ryan was 3, the pattern was firmly established. Ryan was the charming, athletic one. I was the smart one who didn't need help. When I brought home straight A's, my parents would nod and say, "That's what we expect from you, Madison." When Ryan managed a C+ in math, they'd take him out for ice cream to celebrate his improvement. The inequity wasn't subtle. My 10th birthday party was rescheduled twice because of Ryan's t-ball games. My piano recitals were attended by my grandmother while my parents cheered from the sidelines of Ryan's soccer matches. At family gatherings, relatives would fawn over Ryan's athletic prowess, while my academic achievements warranted a pat on the head and a quick change of subject. "Did you see Ryan's goal today? He's a natural athlete. Madison won the science fair? That's nice. She's always been good at school things." When I was 16, I spent months planning my birthday party. I'd invited friends from the debate team and science club, kids like me who lived in the shadows of the more popular students. The day before my party, Ryan's baseball team unexpectedly made it to a regional playoff game. "We have to reschedule your party, Madison," Mom said, not even looking up from packing the cooler with Ryan's favorite sports drinks. "This is a big opportunity for Ryan. But everyone's already confirmed. Grandmother is coming from New Hampshire." I protested. Dad sighed, giving me that look that made me feel selfish just for speaking up. "This is important for your brother's future. College scouts might be there. You're smart enough to understand that, aren't you?" I did understand. I understood that my carefully planned celebration meant nothing compared to Ryan's impromptu baseball game. I understood that my time, my friends' time, and my feelings were collateral damage in the worship of Ryan's potential. That same year, I began experiencing debilitating migraines. The pain would leave me vomiting and unable to see clearly, sometimes for days. My mother's response was always the same: "You're studying too hard. You need to relax more like your brother." When I finally convinced them to take me to a neurologist, my father spent the entire appointment checking his watch, eventually leaving early to pick Ryan up from football practice. The doctor prescribed medication and suggested stress might be a contributing factor. On the way home, my mother said, "See? The doctor thinks you're too intense too. You should try being more like Ryan." During my senior year of high school, I was named a National Merit Scholar finalist. My awards ceremony conflicted with Ryan's junior varsity basketball game. "We'll try to make it to your thing after Ryan's game," my mother promised. They never showed. When I decided to pursue medical research at Boston University, focusing on autoimmune diseases, my parents seemed confused by my choice. "Couldn't you do something more practical?" my father asked. "Medical school is so expensive, and research doesn't pay well." A week later, they spent $5,000 on a specialized training camp for Ryan, who was a mediocre college baseball player at best. I moved into my dorm with the help of my grandmother and my friend Eliza. My parents were at Ryan's college orientation, despite him being at a school only 30 minutes from our home, while mine was 3 hours away. I thought distance might improve our relationship. Perhaps they'd appreciate me more if I wasn't always around, silently reminding them of their uneven affections. I called regularly, came home for holidays, and continued to hope for the relationship I'd always wanted with them. But as the years passed, the pattern only solidified. My achievements were footnotes. Ryan's everyday life was the headline. And despite knowing better, I continued to hope that someday they would see me too. College became my sanctuary. At Boston University, nobody knew me as Ryan's sister or the quiet, smart one. I was just Madison, dedicated, passionate, and finally free to pursue my interests without constant comparison. My freshman roommate, Rebecca, quickly became the sister I'd never had. Unlike my parents, she actually listened when I spoke about my research interests. We'd stay up late discussing everything from cellular biology to relationship drama, and I found myself opening up about my family for the first time. Wait, they missed your high school graduation for your brother's baseball practice? Not even a game? Rebecca asked, incredulous. Until then, I'd normalized their behavior. Hearing Rebecca's shock made me realize how truly dysfunctional my family dynamic was. In my sophomore year, I began working in Dr. Eleanor Franklin's immunology lab. She became the mentor I'd always craved. Someone who valued my intelligence, encouraged my curiosity, and celebrated my achievements. "You have a remarkable mind, Madison," she told me after I'd helped solve a particularly challenging research problem. "Your approach to these cellular anomalies is genuinely innovative." I nearly cried hearing those words. No one had ever described me as remarkable before. By junior year, I was thriving academically but still struggling with those mysterious health issues. The migraines continued, now accompanied by joint pain and fatigue that doctors couldn't quite explain. I learned to push through, scheduling my classes around my body's unpredictable betrayals. Senior year brought both challenges and triumphs. I was accepted into BU's prestigious PhD program with a full research fellowship. When I called my parents with the news, my mother's response was typical. "That's nice, honey. Did you hear Ryan got an interview for the assistant coaching position? We're so excited." I hung up and cried for an hour. Then I called my grandmother, who cheered so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. During graduate school, I met Michael, another researcher focused on autoimmune disorders. Our friendship was built on mutual respect and shared scientific passion. He noticed how I would tense up whenever family calls came in. "You're different after you talk to them," he observed. Smaller somehow. Michael introduced me to his circle of friends, and for the first time, I experienced what it felt like to be valued just for being myself. Among them was James, a pediatric physical therapist with kind eyes and a quiet confidence that put me at ease immediately. Our first date lasted 6 hours, just talking at a coffee shop until the staff had to ask us to leave. With James, I never felt like I was competing for attention or affection. He listened when I spoke and remembered details about my research that even my parents couldn't recall after years of explanation. "Tell me more about this T-cell response you're studying," he'd say, genuinely interested in my answers. As my personal life blossomed, my professional life accelerated. By 28, I had published several well-received papers on novel approaches to treating autoimmune disorders. I was invited to speak at conferences and began building a reputation in my field. James accompanied me to a family Thanksgiving during our second year together. He witnessed firsthand the dynamic I'd described. Madison just received a significant research grant, James mentioned during dinner, trying to create space for my achievements. "That's nice," my father said distractedly. "Ryan, tell everyone about your team's new training facility." Later that night, James held me as I tried not to cry. "They're missing out on knowing an incredible woman," he whispered. Despite my growing success, holidays and family gatherings remained exercises in invisibility. I'd arrive with news of publications or grants, only to have conversations immediately redirected to Ryan's minor coaching achievements or my parents' golf scores. Meanwhile, my health continued to be mysterious and troubling. Episodes of pain and fatigue would leave me bedridden for days. Multiple specialists offered contradictory diagnoses: fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, early onset arthritis, anxiety disorder. "You're just working too hard," my mother said dismissively when I mentioned yet another inconclusive doctor's appointment. Ryan never gets sick because he knows how to relax. At 30, I received the Callaway Foundation grant, a prestigious $1.2 million award for my research into targeted cellular therapies for autoimmune disorders. It was the pinnacle of early career achievement in my field. The foundation flew me to Chicago for an awards ceremony. "We'd love to come, sweetheart," my mother said when I called with an invitation, "but Ryan's community league has a championship game that weekend." "You understand, don't you?" I did understand. I understood that after 30 years, nothing had changed, and perhaps nothing ever would. I attended the ceremony with James, Rebecca, and Dr. Franklin, people who had chosen to be my family when my biological one couldn't be bothered. As I built my life and career, I continued reaching out to my parents, hoping for recognition that never came. Every achievement was met with polite disinterest, every health concern with dismissal. It was a painful pattern, but one I had learned to expect. What I didn't expect was just how dangerous their indifference would ultimately prove to be. The evening it happened, I'd been working late in the lab. We were in the final stages of preparing a groundbreaking paper on a new therapeutic approach for lupus. Around 8 p.m., I noticed an unusual sensation in my abdomen, a sharp pain unlike the typical aches I'd grown accustomed to. "You should head home," Michael suggested, noticing me wince. "We can finish this tomorrow." I brushed it off. "I'm fine. Probably just need to eat something." By 9 p.m., the pain had intensified dramatically. I finally decided to call it a night and drove myself home to my apartment in Cambridge. James was out of town at a physical therapy conference in Denver, so I was on my own. As I unlocked my door, a wave of pain unlike anything I'd ever experienced doubled me over. I barely made it to the couch before collapsing. The pain was concentrated in my lower right abdomen, but radiated throughout my entire body. Cold sweat broke out across my skin, and my vision began to blur around the edges. I reached for my phone with trembling hands. My first instinct was to call 911, but a quick check of my health insurance app reminded me that ambulances weren't fully covered. The estimated wait time for emergency services was showing as 28 to 45 minutes due to high call volume. My parents lived just 15 minutes away. They could get to me faster than an ambulance and drive me to the hospital. Despite our complicated relationship, surely they would come in an emergency. I called my mother's cell phone. Voicemail. I called my father's. Voicemail. I tried our family landline. No answer. The pain crescendoed. I could barely breathe through it now. I sent a text to both parents. Emergency. Severe pain. Need help getting to hospital. Please call immediately. Through the fog of pain, I remembered it was Thursday, the night my parents usually had dinner with Ryan. I called his number, desperate now. Voicemail. I curled into a fetal position on the couch, tears streaming down my face. The room was starting to spin. Something was very wrong. I tried my mother again. Voicemail. My father. Voicemail. Ryan. Voicemail. With shaking fingers, I opened Instagram, remembering my mother's newfound obsession with posting family moments. The most recent post, from 20 minutes ago, showed my parents, Ryan, and several friends at an upscale restaurant. The caption read, "Celebrating our amazing son's promotion to head assistant coach. #proud parents, #blessed family." They were ignoring my calls while celebrating Ryan's minor career advancement, a promotion that essentially just added a word to his existing title. As another wave of pain crashed over me, I somehow managed to call 911, though I knew help would take time to arrive. I then tried my neighbor, Grace, a retired nurse who lived across the hall. Thank God she answered. Madison? Are you all right? Her voice was concerned. I could barely speak through the pain. Help, please, can't. Hospital. Grace found me minutes later, pale and semi-conscious on the couch. She recognized the severity immediately and called her son, who lived in the building. Together, they carried me to her car. The next few hours were a blur of emergency room lights, concerned medical professionals, and tests. The diagnosis finally came, a ruptured ovarian cyst with complications. My unusually high white blood cell count indicated my body was fighting the internal bleeding that had been occurring for hours. The doctor looked grim. You're lucky you got here when you did, he said. With your particular condition, this could have been life-threatening if left untreated much longer. Grace stayed with me until I was stabilized and moved to a room. She used my phone to keep trying my parents, finally reaching my mother around midnight, nearly 3 hours after my initial calls. Oh, we were at a celebration for Ryan and had our phones on silent, my mother explained, her voice casual. Is everything okay? Grace, normally a soft-spoken woman, was livid. No, everything is not okay. Your daughter has been hospitalized with a serious medical emergency. She could have died. There was a pause on the line. We'll be right there, my mother finally said. My parents arrived an hour later, still dressed in their evening wear. My father smelled faintly of whiskey. Ryan wasn't with them. Oh, Madison, my mother said, patting my hand. You gave us quite a scare. Why didn't you call an ambulance? I stared at her in disbelief, too weak and medicated to articulate the crushing disappointment. Grace, who had refused to leave until my family arrived, stepped in. She called you multiple times. She texted you that it was an emergency. My father checked his phone, frowning. We had the phones on silent for Ryan's celebration dinner. It was an important night for him. More important than your daughter's life? Grace asked, her voice quiet but sharp. My parents looked uncomfortable but not particularly remorseful. They stayed for about 30 minutes, making small talk and repeatedly mentioning that they'd have to get back soon because Ryan's celebration was continuing at their house with extended family. He worked so hard for this promotion, my mother explained to the unimpressed nurse who came to check my vitals. We're just so proud. As they prepared to leave, my father squeezed my hand. You'll be fine, Madison. You're strong. Ryan's friends are all at the house and they're expecting us back. You understand. It wasn't a question. They assumed I understood and accepted my place in the family hierarchy even now, even like this. As they walked out, I heard my mother say, she's always been prone to these dramatic episodes. Remember those migraines in high school? Always during Ryan's big games. The door closed behind them and I was alone again. The medication couldn't numb the pain of their indifference. They had chosen, once again, to prioritize Ryan's celebration over my emergency. Only this time, their choice could have cost me my life. I spent 3 days in the hospital recovering. During that time, my parents visited exactly twice, both brief appearances between Ryan's various celebration events. Their second visit lasted exactly 22 minutes. I timed it on the wall clock above my bed. We can't stay long, my mother explained, checking her watch repeatedly. Ryan's college buddies organized a dinner at Morton's Steakhouse tonight. They're flying in from all over. For his promotion to head assistant coach? I asked, the medication making me bold. The same job with just a new adjective? My father frowned. Madison, don't be petty. Your brother has worked very hard. You know athletics isn't like academia where they just hand out promotions based on time served. I bit back a laugh. Ryan had gotten his coaching position through our father's college teammate who ran the athletics department. Meanwhile, I'd spent years in rigorous research and peer review to earn my position. My mother smoothed my blanket unnecessarily. The doctors say you'll be fine. Just a cyst. Women get those all the time. It ruptured, Mom. I was bleeding internally. The doctor said if I'd arrived 2 hours later, I could have gone into septic shock. She patted my hand. You've always been so dramatic about your health, sweetheart. Remember those migraines you used to get? I closed my eyes, too exhausted to argue. When I opened them again, they were gathering their things to leave. Ryan's picking us up downstairs, my father explained. We told him not to bother coming up since you need your rest. After they left, a nurse named Darlene came in to check my vitals. She'd witnessed both of my parents' brief visits. Honey, she said, adjusting my fore with gentle hands, I don't mean to overstep, but are those really your emergency contacts? I nodded, tears threatening. Let's update your forms, she suggested kindly. Who actually showed up for you? That evening, I added James, Rebecca, and Grace to my emergency contact list. I removed my parents. James flew back early from his conference and arrived that night, his face drawn with worry. Unlike my family, he stayed, sleeping uncomfortably in the visitor's chair, bringing me small comforts from home, advocating with doctors when I was too tired to speak for myself. I tried calling your parents when I landed, he mentioned, careful to keep his tone neutral. They didn't pick up. I left a message. They never returned his call. Rebecca arrived the next morning with my favorite tea and my laptop in case I felt up to working. Michael came by with flowers from everyone at the lab. Dr. Franklin sent a handwritten note and arranged for meals to be delivered to the hospital. My chosen family surrounded me with care, while my biological one celebrated Ryan's minor achievement for the third consecutive day. On the day of my discharge, I received a text from my mother. Sorry we can't pick you up today. Taking Ryan and his friends for a boat tour of the harbor. His college roommate Jeff flew in all the way from Seattle. Let us know when you're home safe. James helped me into his car, his jaw tight with unspoken anger on my behalf. They're not bad people, I said quietly, feeling the need to defend them despite everything. They just love him more. James gripped the steering wheel. Madison, this isn't about loving one child more than another. This is about basic human decency. They ignored emergency calls while you were in life-threatening danger. As we drove past the harbor, I caught a glimpse of my parents' boat. I could make out my father's distinctive laugh, my mother's floral dress, Ryan surrounded by friends, all celebrating, all oblivious to the fact that I'd nearly died while they partied. Something inside me finally broke. The carefully constructed explanations I'd built over decades. They're just proud of him. They show love differently. They don't mean to hurt me, crumbled away, leaving only the stark truth. I would never be a priority to them. Not even when my life was at risk. That night, in James's apartment where I would stay during my recovery, I sobbed until I had no tears left. James held me, bearing witness to 32 years of accumulated grief. I'm done, I whispered when I could finally speak again. I'm done hoping they'll change. I'm done making excuses for them. I'm done pretending it doesn't hurt. What do you want to do? James asked. I stared at the ceiling, a strange calm settling over me. I want them to see me. Really see me, just once. And then I want to build a life where I'm not constantly hoping for scraps of attention from people who have shown me exactly where I stand. I'm with you, he said simply. Whatever you decide. As I drifted off to sleep that night, my mind was unusually clear. The decision I'd made wasn't about revenge. It was about finally standing in my truth. For once, I would make sure my parents couldn't look away. They had ignored my emergency for a celebration. It seemed only fitting that I would use their next celebration to open their eyes. Recovery gave me ample time to think. As my body healed, my mind worked through decades of neglect and disappointment, cataloging patterns I'd previously excused. James had taken 2 weeks off work to care for me, something my parents hadn't even offered. When they finally came to visit me at his apartment, 5 days after my discharge, they stayed for exactly 45 minutes and spent most of that time showing me photos from Ryan's various celebration events. "Did you know his promotion came with a 5% raise?" my mother said proudly, as if he'd won a Nobel Prize. "The athletic director says he's on track for bigger things." I nodded politely, a plan already forming in my mind. After they left, I began my research. First, I needed to understand exactly what my parents' financial situation was. Growing up, money was never discussed openly, but there had been hints of strain. My father's investment firm had weathered several downturns, and my mother's interior design business catered to a wealthy clientele that had diminished during economic contractions. Through public records and subtle conversations with family friends, I pieced together a concerning picture. My parents were living well beyond their means. Their waterfront home, country club memberships, and frequent luxury vacations were funded largely by debt and gradually liquidating their retirement accounts. Meanwhile, I discovered Ryan had been taking substantial loans from them for years, money for a failed sports bar venture, to cover gambling debts, to finance a lifestyle that mimicked our parents without the decades of work behind it. None of these loans had been repaid. This explained why they'd been so resistant to helping with my student loans or medical bills over the years. They simply didn't have it. All their resources were channeled to Ryan and maintaining appearances. What they didn't know was that my research career had flourished. The Callaway Grant was just one of several significant funding sources I'd secured. My recent patent application for a novel treatment delivery system was being fast-tracked with considerable commercial interest. I lived modestly despite having substantial savings and investments, a financial cushion my parents and brother lacked entirely. Most surprisingly, I discovered that the anonymous donation that had saved my parents' country club membership 3 years ago, preventing profound social embarrassment when they couldn't pay their dues, had come from a shell company that was actually owned by my grandmother. She had left me a significant inheritance when she passed, which I'd invested wisely. I'd unknowingly been supporting my parents financially while they continued to dismiss my accomplishments and prioritize Ryan. The irony was almost too perfect. As I dug deeper, I learned that my parents were planning a lavish 35th anniversary celebration at the very country club I'd secretly helped them maintain membership in. Ryan was organizing it, or rather, taking credit for organizing it while asking friends and relatives to contribute financially. I called my parents' closest friends, the Harrisons, under the pretense of contributing to the anniversary plans. "Oh, Madison, that's so thoughtful," Mrs. Harrison said. "Ryan mentioned you might not be able to help much with your academic salary and all. He's asked each couple for $500 toward the party." I thanked her and hung up, seething. Ryan had been collecting money from family friends while implying I was too financially constrained to contribute, when in reality, I could have funded the entire event without noticing the expense. The anniversary party would be perfect. All their friends would be there. Extended family. Colleagues. Everyone who had heard selective stories about their children over the years. I wasn't interested in public humiliation or cruel revenge. I simply wanted the truth to be known about who I was, about what I'd accomplished, and about the family dynamic that had shaped us all. I consulted with my therapist, Dr. Winters, whom I'd been seeing since the hospitalization. "This isn't about punishing them," I explained. "It's about finally being seen. About stopping a lifetime of patterns that hurt me and, honestly, enable Ryan's worst tendencies." She nodded thoughtfully. "The difference between revenge and boundary setting is intention. Are you trying to hurt them back, or are you trying to establish a healthier relationship moving forward?" "The latter," I said firmly. "I don't want to cut them off. I just want them to see me, really see me for once." With my ethical compass calibrated, I began preparing. I gathered financial records, emails, medical documents, and photographs. Evidence not to shame them, but to make denial impossible. I contacted the event planner Ryan had hired, introducing myself as his sister who wanted to contribute a special surprise presentation for my parents. She was delighted by my involvement and completely accommodating. I drafted and redrafted what I would say, removing any hint of bitterness or accusation, focusing instead on facts and feelings. This wasn't about making them look bad. It was about making myself visible after a lifetime in the shadows. As the anniversary date approached, I felt surprisingly calm. This wasn't an act of hostility, but of self-respect. For once, I would ensure that my parents actually saw me, the successful, accomplished woman I had become despite their neglect, not the afterthought they had always treated me as. The final piece fell into place when I received notification that my research team had been awarded the prestigious Lockhart Prize, a recognition that came with significant funding and national attention. The announcement would be made public the day after my parents' anniversary party. Everything was ready. After 32 years of being overlooked, I would finally step into the light. The country club ballroom gleamed with tasteful decorations, orchid centerpieces, champagne fountains, and silver anniversary decorations adorned every surface. A string quartet played in the corner as guests mingled, admiring the photo timeline of my parents' marriage that Ryan had arranged along one wall. I noticed he'd included only a handful of photos featuring me, while he appeared prominently throughout. I arrived deliberately late, wanting to make an entrance. The black cocktail dress I'd chosen was elegant, but not flashy, professional rather than attention-seeking. My medical research foundation's small diamond pin was my only jewelry. James squeezed my hand as we entered. "Ready?" I nodded, a strange calm having settled over me. Completely. My mother spotted us first, her smile genuine but brief. "Madison, we weren't sure you'd make it. How are you feeling?" "Fully recovered. Thank you," I said, accepting her air kiss. "Congratulations on 35 years. My father appeared, champagne in hand. "There's our scholar. Good to see you up and about again." Ryan's been working so hard on this event. As if summoned, my brother materialized, already taking credit. "Maddie, you made it." He gave me a quick hug, then immediately launched into a description of how difficult it had been to coordinate everything. The flower arrangements alone took weeks to plan. I smiled politely, knowing the florist had handled everything with minimal input. "It looks wonderful. You must be so proud of what you've accomplished here." He missed my subtle emphasis. "It was nothing, really. Just wanted to give Mom and Dad the celebration they deserve." The evening progressed predictably. Dinner was served, toasts were made, most focusing on what wonderful parents Diana and Richard had been, particularly to Ryan, their pride and joy. No one mentioned how they had missed my medical emergency or any of the 1,000 other moments where their priorities had been clear. When the dessert course was being cleared, Ryan stood, tapping his glass for attention. "And now, I'd like to present a special video tribute I've created for the best parents anyone could ask for." The lights dimmed, and a screen descended from the ceiling. Ryan's video began, a saccharine montage set to emotional music, featuring primarily photos of himself with our parents, interspersed with gushing testimonials from their friends. My appearances were fleeting and often cropped. As the video ended to applause, Ryan moved smoothly into another announcement. "And now, I have some personal news to share on this special night." He beamed. "I've been offered the position of Associate Athletic Director at Northeastern. It comes with a significant salary increase, but also," he paused for effect, "requires some initial investment for relocation and appropriate professional attire." I watched my parents' faces, seeing the mixture of pride and concern. They were thrilled for him, but worried about the initial investment he was clearly about to request. "Mom, Dad," Ryan continued, "I know you've always supported my dreams, and I'm hoping you can help me with this transition. I've calculated I'll need about $50,000 to make this move properly." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. It was an enormous sum to request publicly, especially from parents nearing retirement. My father looked uncomfortable but managed a smile. We'll discuss this later, son. Ryan, oblivious to the awkwardness he'd created, smiled confidently. I know you'll want to help me succeed in this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. This was my moment. I stood, smoothing my dress. Actually, before we move on, I have a small presentation as well. For Mom and Dad's anniversary. Ryan looked annoyed at having his spotlight redirected. We're already running behind schedule, Maddie. This will only take a few minutes, I said pleasantly, nodding to the event coordinator who had my presentation ready. The screen illuminated again, but this time with a professional-looking slide bearing the logo of my research foundation. I wanted to share some news about our family that many of you might not be aware of. The room quieted, curiosity piqued. Many of you know me as Ryan's sister or Richard and Diana's other child. I began, my voice steady. But I'd like to introduce myself properly. I'm Dr. Madison Bailey, lead researcher at the Immunological Innovations Laboratory and recently named recipient of the Lockhart Prize for Medical Research. Confused but polite applause followed as I advanced to a slide showing our lab and research team. Over the past decade, I've been developing treatments for autoimmune disorders that affect millions of Americans. Last year, our team secured patents on delivery systems that are now being implemented in hospitals nationwide. I clicked to the next slide, showing the financial growth of my foundation. The work has been more successful than I could have imagined. Our foundation now manages over $20 million in research grants and private funding. My parents' expressions shifted from polite interest to shock as they began to grasp the scale of what I was describing. What many people don't know, I continued calmly, is that for the past 5 years, I've also been anonymously supporting causes important to our family. The next slide appeared, showing the country club's membership ledger with the source of payment highlighted, including maintaining the family's country club membership when finances became tight. A murmur went through the crowd. My father's face had gone pale. I've also established a medical research scholarship at Dad's alma mater, I continued, showing the endowment documentation, and contributed to Mom's favorite arts organization when they faced budget cuts. My mother's hand had risen to her throat, her eyes wide. I'm sharing this not to embarrass anyone, but because as we celebrate my parents' marriage tonight, I want them to finally know the truth about their daughter, the one whose emergency calls went unanswered during Ryan's promotion celebration, the one who nearly died while they sent me to voicemail. The room had gone completely silent. I've spent my life trying to earn your attention, I said, looking directly at my parents now. Achieving in school, building a successful career, even financially supporting you from the shadows. But I've realized that no achievement will ever be enough to compete with Ryan. Ryan started to protest, but I held up my hand. This isn't about blame, Ryan. This is about truth. You've benefited from their unwavering support while I've struggled alone. The loans you've received over the years, I clicked to documentation of his financial requests, amount to over $300,000 that our parents can't actually afford to give. Shocked whispers rippled through the gathering. My purpose tonight isn't to embarrass anyone, I continued, my voice softening. It's to establish reality so we can move forward honestly. I'm not asking for repayment or apologies. I'm asking for recognition of who I am, what I've accomplished, and what I've contributed to this family. I clicked to the final slide, showing the announcement of the Lockhart Prize with my photo prominently featured. Tomorrow, this will be announced publicly. It represents the highest honor in my field and includes a $2 million research grant. I had hoped, just once, that my achievements might be celebrated by my family the way Ryan's have always been. I took a deep breath. Moving forward, I'll no longer be the family's secret supporter or the daughter who accepts being invisible. I'm establishing boundaries, not cutting ties. I love you all, but I deserve to be seen. The silence in the room was deafening. My parents stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. Perhaps they were. Happy anniversary, Mom and Dad, I concluded quietly. My gift to you is the truth and the opportunity for us to build a more honest relationship moving forward. I returned to my seat beside James, who squeezed my hand proudly. The stunned silence gradually gave way to murmurs, then to scattered applause led by my father's business partner, who had always been kind to me. My mother was crying silently. My father looked shell-shocked. Ryan appeared both embarrassed and confused, his financial request now appearing selfish and inappropriate in context. I hadn't destroyed them or humiliated them. I had simply stepped out of the shadows and refused to be overlooked any longer. The choice of how to respond was now theirs. As the evening continued awkwardly around us, various guests approached me quietly, many expressing admiration for my work and congratulations on the Lockhart Prize. Several admitted they'd had no idea I was so accomplished. "We always hear so much about Ryan," one of my mother's friends confessed. "Diana rarely mentions your work." By the end of the night, my parents had barely spoken, clearly processing everything I'd revealed. As guests departed, my father finally approached me, his expression unreadable. "We should talk," he said simply. "Not tonight, but soon." I nodded. "I'd like that." It wasn't dramatic or explosive. There was no screaming or accusations. Just the quiet dismantling of a family myth that had shaped all our lives. As James and I drove home, I felt lighter than I had in years. Whatever happened next, I had finally been seen. The aftermath unfolded slowly, like ice thawing after a long winter. 3 days passed before my parents called, asking if they could visit. I agreed, suggesting we meet at a neutral location, a quiet cafe near the harbor. They arrived looking older somehow, the confident veneer stripped away. My mother's hands trembled slightly as she stirred her tea. "We've been doing a lot of thinking," my father began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "And a lot of talking." "That's good," I said simply, waiting. "Madison, we had no idea." My mother started, then faltered. "The foundation, the grants, the country club payments. Why didn't you tell us? Would it have mattered?" I asked gently. "Would it have changed how you saw me compared to Ryan?" They exchanged uncomfortable glances, the truth written in their silence. "We're not bad parents," my father said defensively, then caught himself. "At least, we didn't think we were. We love both our children." "I know you love me," I acknowledged. "But love without respect or recognition isn't enough. You've celebrated Ryan's every minor achievement while dismissing my major ones. You ignored emergency calls while celebrating his promotion. That's not just misplaced priorities, that's fundamental neglect." My mother wiped away tears. "We never meant to hurt you." "Intent doesn't erase impact," I said, remembering Dr. Winter's words. "I nearly died while you sent me to voicemail. Whether you meant to hurt me or not, you did." The conversation continued for hours, painful but necessary. They asked about my medical research, seemingly genuinely interested for the first time. I explained my work in simple terms, watching their expressions shift from confusion to understanding to something like pride. "We'd like to attend the Lockhart Prize ceremony," my father said as we prepared to leave. "If you'll have us." It was a small step, but significant. "I'd like that," I replied. Ryan's reaction was more complicated. He called me repeatedly, his messages oscillating between defensive anger and confused apologies. He'd grown up believing he was the family star. Having that narrative challenged was understandably disorienting for him. We finally met for coffee 2 weeks after the anniversary party. He arrived looking uncharacteristically disheveled. "I don't understand why you had to embarrass me like that," he began, defensive as expected. "I didn't do it to embarrass you, Ryan. I did it to be seen." But everyone was talking about how I've been taking advantage of Mom and Dad financially. "Have you?" I asked simply. He looked away. "Not intentionally. They always offered to help. Because they prioritized your needs and wants over everything, including their own financial security and my emergency medical situation." Ryan was quiet for a long moment. I didn't know about the hospital thing. Not really. They just said you weren't feeling well. I nearly died, Ryan. The realization seemed to hit him for the first time. I'm sorry, Maddie. I really am. It wasn't a complete transformation, but it was a start. In the months that followed, I maintained firm boundaries with my family while leaving the door open for a healthier relationship. My parents attended the Lockhart Prize ceremony, visibly proud as I accepted the award and delivered a speech about perseverance and innovation. They still sometimes slipped into old habits of centralizing Ryan, but caught themselves more often than not. Ryan began seeing a therapist of his own and started repaying small amounts of what he'd borrowed from our parents. He took a job that paid less but offered more stability than the position he'd been angling for at Northeastern, acknowledging that perhaps the constant pursuit of status wasn't serving him well. My health improved significantly once the family stress diminished. The mysterious symptoms that had plagued me for years became less frequent and less severe. Dr. Winters helped me recognize how much of my physical distress had been connected to emotional trauma. James proposed 6 months after the anniversary party, on a quiet evening at home rather than with any grand gesture. I want to build a family with you, he said simply. One where everyone is seen and valued. I accepted without hesitation. My foundation flourished, with our research leading to breakthrough treatments for several autoimmune conditions. I established mentorship programs specifically designed to support researchers from overlooked backgrounds, knowing firsthand how important recognition could be. When my parents announced they needed to downsize due to financial constraints, I helped them find a comfortable condo they could actually afford. It was smaller than their waterfront home, but more sustainable for their retirement. They seemed relieved rather than embarrassed when I helped them create a realistic budget. The most profound healing came not from dramatic confrontations, but from small moments of change. My mother calling to ask specifically about my research. My father sending articles related to my field that he'd found interesting. Ryan asking for my opinion rather than centering himself in every conversation. I never did fully trust them with my emergencies again. That bridge had been burned permanently. But we built new connections based on honesty rather than expectation or obligation. At our small wedding ceremony the following spring, my father surprised me with a toast that acknowledged the past without excusing it. Madison has always been extraordinary, he said, his voice thick with emotion. And I regret how long it took us to truly see that. She hasn't just built an impressive career. She's built herself into a woman of incredible strength, intelligence, and compassion, often without the support she deserved from us. James, you're getting the best of the Bailey family, and we couldn't be prouder. It wasn't perfect healing. Real life rarely provides such neat resolutions. There were still difficult moments, old patterns that tried to reassert themselves. But the fundamental dynamic had shifted. I was no longer invisible. My revenge, if you could call it that, wasn't about hurting my family, but about refusing to remain unseen. By standing in my truth calmly, firmly, and without apology, I had changed not just how they saw me, but how I saw myself. What's your story? Have you ever had to stand up to family members who consistently overlooked or undervalued you? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to the channel for more personal journeys of growth and healing. Remember that establishing boundaries isn't about punishing others, it's about honoring yourself. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you courage in writing your own.